Hi, if you think that picking 25 best of the best games for 1994 was difficult, trust me, 1995 was a battle, and there's no winning it. There were just way too many great games. But if I had to boil it down to 25 best in all genres, then we'd end up with these. Not many know about it, but work on Dark Forces actually began before the one on Doom did. It was delayed by LucasArts, however, because they wanted to polish the engine and add features. They wanted to make the game that would be remembered and that would shape the genre for years to come. So features like jumping, crawling and ability to look around were a staple of its design. Something that Doom did not have, and virtually all games in the genre today do. Dark Forces does not recreate the story of any of the movies, but instead features an original plot, a prequel to the trilogy. You'll Kyle Katarn, a former Imperial officer turned mercenary who joined the rebellion. You're initially hired to steal the plans for the Death Star, but soon discover the existence of mysterious Dark Troopers, a new and stronger version of a regular Stormtrooper. A cybernetic enhanced warriors capable of turning the tide of war and securing the final win for the Empire. And believe it or not, but I haven't got a single bad thing to say about this game. It's just great. The story is interesting and spans over 14 missions that require both keen eye to kill all the baddies and ability to solve some very simple and omnipresent puzzles. Graphics and sounds are amazing for the time and arguably a step up over those found in both Doom games. Naturally, well-lit, futuristic and clean environments are completely different to dark and gloomy in id Software's titles, but the bump in quality is definitely noticeable. Many known to the fans of the movie's areas and settings are present in the game and beautifully recreated, so places like Coruscant or inside of a Star Destroyer to name a few. Yup, you'll get to visit them in-game. Same can be said about many well-known characters that are represented in full detail and easily recognizable. I mean, who hasn't dreamt of meeting Jabba the Hutt? Star Wars Dark Forces is a polished and well-executed game that fans of both FPS games and Star Wars will no doubt enjoy a lot. By 1995, LucasArts were undisputed king, queen and a whole royal crowd when it came to slowly dying genre of point-and-click adventure games. And to be frank, there were hardly any other companies that could realistically compete with them on the same level. Full Throttle was their flagship for 1995 and a game that was supposed to shape the pre-established gameplay and interface formula that LucasArts years before defined for the whole genre. The game is much more like a full-motion cartoon than any other before, featuring many fully animated cutscenes and streamlined interface and puzzles to suit this new form. From the story side, it made it easier to follow and complete, as it was more linear and used simpler puzzles with easier to comprehend set of just few actions available to perform. One of them famously being a kick, as in a game about bikers, there had to be a kick, right? And trust me, you're going to be using it left and right, spreading crusty hill justice all around. If not for puzzling, then to have a laugh. All coins have two sides though, and this one is no different. While Full Throttle was easier for an average player and more welcoming to those who were not intimate with the genre, it also alienated hardcore fans a little. As for them, it radiated that uncanny feeling of being just a set of very simplistic, usually single location contained puzzles that were there just to get you from one cutscene to another. Personally, I don't mind it at all, as I have deep appreciation for all LucasArts titles, but I definitely am not in majority. Still, if you're one on the fence, trust me, it's worth having a go at anyway, as despite being simpler, it's really good. Like bacon good. And not Kevin but fried. Heroes of Might and Magic is Might and Magic spin-off and arguably one of the most important games in the entire history of gaming, not just for 1995. It started the series that run to this day and are among favorites of many players and not just myself. Simply put, Heroes of Might and Magic is a turn-based strategy with role-playing elements and tactical combat, in which you take control of one of four heroes: Warlock, Sorcerer, Barbarian or a Knight. The gameplay revolves around keeping your castle well defended, in the same time hunting down and defeating all enemies and then capturing and holding their castles. All of these can be expanded upon by adding new buildings that allow for recruiting of various units for your armies. Most of the time you'll spend on a top view map, however, which you'll be exploring to your heart's content, fighting random packs of monsters, finding treasures, capturing mines and other resource sources, all to develop and strengthen your kingdom. Whenever you're attacked or attack a random group of monsters, enemy hero or a castle, the game switches to a side view tactical mode. All of your units are shown here as stacks and you can move them around on a hexagonal grid. This is also where you get to use them in battle, which same as an overworld map section is turn-based too. Each turn you can move one unit and order it to attack if possible, and then opponent's turn start. Rinse and repeat until one of you is left standing on the battlefield. Other than casting combat and support spells, heroes don't take direct part in a battle. They gain experience from them though, in a typical RPG manner no less, and it can be used to boost their stats. They can also collect and use additional items and gear for added bonuses. Heroes of Might and Magic is truly a unique experience that only got better with next couple of games released. But that's something for a completely different video. A religious extremist group known as Mondites is on a campaign to conquer the galaxy. Their philosophy is based on the idea of evolution through cybernetically implanting humans with machine parts. You're one of the victims, stripped of your memories and modeled into a cybernetic killing machine by evil Dr. Mastaba. I swear to God, those villain names in games are getting more and more ridiculous with each next one. What's next to come? Mr. Wabadabdab? Or maybe Dr. Kung Fu? Oh, I know, Professor Poopy Pants, the evil ruler of a Pantiverse. Never mind. In Bioforge, you have to explore the complex you're locked in, discover the secrets behind the evil conspiracy and hopefully escape it alive, discovering who you are along the way. Or who you were, really. Bioforge is a 3D textured polygonal action adventure kinda similar in the way it works to Alone in the Dark, with 3D characters and objects on flat pre-rendered backgrounds. You'll be collecting items and solving puzzles, all to figure out secrets of the complex you're locked in and to flee the captivity. Many of the combat encounters you'll partake in require smart tactics rather than brute force to win, so keep that in mind while playing. And use anything and everything you can to your advantage. Bioforge is one of the more interesting and unique titles from 1995, especially because of its captivating and rich story. But also one of the most notorious difficult games of its era, so that's also something to take into account when playing. XCOM Terror from the Deep is a sequel to year prior's UFO Enemy Unknown, and easily one of the best games of 1995, not only in its genre. It's a turn-based mix of global strategy, base management and tactical combat with some light role-playing elements. Terror from the Deep takes place 40 years after the first game and assumes that the player managed to defeat the alien plague. Interesting assumption, given that the original was rather unforgiving and you were nearly always one mistake away from losing your best squad and henceforth forfeiting the future of Earth. Still, in XCOM, alien sightings have resurfaced in the recent years and especially in the last few months became more and more common. These sightings, however, very quickly turned into activities and this, in a very short while, became violent. The aliens are now more destructive and dangerous than they ever were. In Terror from the Deep, pesky creatures are not coming from above, but from below, from depths of the oceans. Now, gameplay-wise, XCOM's literally no different at all to UFO. And good, cause there was nothing wrong with that one, and you don't fix what works. But if I'm to be honest, and since we're on the subject, I wouldn't mind seeing presentation get a bump up to high-res VGA. It didn't happen, but I suppose if you wanna poop out such a huge content-wise game and an excellent follow-up in a span of just a year, then even in the 90s some corners had to be cut and some assets reused. And frankly, I'm good with that. Also, I know I said poop. It's for fun. Despite all that, XCOM is not identical to UFO. Tactical encounters can now take place both on land and underwater and require not only the use of appropriate gear, but also weapons that can be used when submerged. Granted, it's an early game gimmick, as along with time spent with the game, weapons quickly evolve to become universal and have no limitations of that kind, but it's a nice touch even if short-lived. What's interesting about XCOM though is that while it takes place 40 years after the original, we're left with virtually no tech from the first encounter. We have no plasma weapons or alien technologies, even though we were using and manufacturing this by a truckload before. I suppose its removal must have been needed for the gameplay loop and progression purposes. XCOM is even more difficult than its predecessor was, which means it may not be the best game in the series for someone to start their adventure with tactical squad-based strategies, but in the same time it's an excellent treat to those who completed and replayed the first title to death. It's just fantastic. Gabriel Knight 2 The Beast Within is a direct follow-up to the earlier, as good title in the series called Sins of the Fathers. Gabriel Knight, our protagonist, officially a former bookstore owner, is in reality the last in generations of so-called Schattenjaggers, shadow hunters whose task is to find and fight evil forces all around the world. Great start, right? After the events of the first game, Gabriel and his assistant Miss Grace Nakimura moved to the Ritter Castle in Bavaria in Germany to his family's historical home, where Gabriel, initially involved in a seemingly simple case of a young girl killed by a wolf, will eventually uncover and cleanse the mysterious Hunter Society, in the process learning about Bavaria's dark past and secrets. While Beast Within is a real full-fledged point-and-click adventure, it is also chock full of numerous FMV sequences that seem to trigger with most interactions, adding to the atmosphere a lot. It's not just a simple and linear FMV game though, let's make this clear, and you have to bring your adventure A game to complete it. Getting yourself accustomed with many characters, following long dialogue trees and learning a lot from them doing detective work, figuring out what, where, when, why and how happened, and solving many puzzles. Both Gabriel and Grace are playable characters in Beast Within during different alternating sections of the story. The game is a masterpiece of blood-chilling, suspenseful, well-told mystery that instantly became a benchmark of how games using FMV sequences should look, feel and play. It proved that simple watching of videos should not be used as gameplay mechanic, but rather serve as a background, adding a lot to the ambience of the plot. The game is full of dark, suspenseful, horror undertones that you witness all throughout, picking at you at every corner, every location you visit and resurfacing just for a moment here and there, toying with your wariness until eventually taking a forefront of the gameplay. It's a must-play. While well known by hardcore fans of the genre, Discworld was generally speaking underappreciated and underrated. It is set and based in Terry Pratchett's Discworld, which is a huge flat disk that the world lays on. Said disk is in turn carried by 4 giant elephants, which themselves stand on the back of even larger turtle. I know, crazy. But that's what you should expect here, a crazy, over-the-top and hilarious adventure filled with humorous situations and ridiculous encounters to the brim. You're Rincewind, the most expandable wizard of the Unseen University, and you're given a task of getting rid of the dragon that's terrorizing the city of Ankh-Morpork. A beautiful name, I must add, as it sounds like, more pork. And you know, bacon. And I love bacon. Anyway, at this exact point, your point-and-clicking otherworldly adventure begins. The game follows the tropes of most others in the genre, with a couple notable exceptions. First of all, your personal inventory is limited to 2 objects only, and the majority of your belongings are stored in a luggage, an intelligent walking chest with dozens of little feet that follows you around like an old puppy. Then there are puzzles, some of which are really deviously designed, they're logical though and not unfair in the slightest, so no trial and error should be necessary. Use your noggin, suspending your disbelief and immersing yourself in the world of Discworld, and you'll be able to easily figure them out. And finally, solving some of them will require time travel. Yep, similar concept to Day of the Tentacle, but used on a more personal level, so to speak. If you're a fan of a genre and never heard of Discworld, I envy you, cause you're gonna have an awesome time with this one. If you're not, try it out anyway, it's odd enough that it may actually be something you'll enjoy playing. After a huge success of the first game, Blizzard Entertainment released Warcraft 2 Tides of Darkness in 1995 and redefined the RTS genre again. It takes place in Blizzard's own kingdom of Azeroth and depicts conflict between humans and orcs. After taking off Azeroth, orcs are mounting for an invasion of Lordaeron. If they manage to do so, the remaining humans, dwarves and elves will cease to exist. So, to counter the deadly horde, 3 races formed an alliance in hopes for saving themselves from the fate of Azeroth. Warcraft 2 is immensely expanded as compared to the previous title though, offering new units and unit types, naval and air being notable additions among them, new types of resources, much better AI, and incomparably flashier graphics in beautiful high-res SVGA. It added a very basic automation of some of the basic tasks too, like for patrols, which may not sound like a lot but was hella useful in protecting of your ever-expanding kingdom. Warcraft 2 was a huge hit and gained popularity faster than the first one could ever dream of doing, which resulted with the release of 4 add-ons, or as we call them now, DLCs, or even expansion packs. Naming aside, all of them added something new and exciting to the gameplay formula, despite some of them not coming from Blizzard themselves. I suppose that Blizzard had to give Warcraft 2 its all, as this time it had a true and real competitor in the form of Command & Conquer. Personally, I'm not big on RTS games, but if you are, you either love it already or will when you play it. Mining operations run by PTMC, so Post-Terran Minerals Corporation, have been hacked, and all of its mining robots went rogue and took human workers present at all sites hostage. You're given a control of a modified Gyro GX ship and are sent out to clear and destroy the mines, by any and all means necessary. Descent, that you're watching on your screen, is a 3D first-person full 720 degrees movement shooter. While you start with a very basic weapon that just pew-pews at the enemies, there are many more to pick up along the way, and all are a definite upgrade over the first one. Some will kapow kapow, others will kaboom kaboom. Am I having a stroke here? What the hell am I talking about? Anyway, most of the weapons use your ship's energy supplies, so have to be used with reason. Holding of a trigger is a recipe for failure, keep that in mind. Each level's main goal is to locate and destroy mine's main reactor. When completed, you're left with 45 seconds to find the escape hatch and exit before the mine explodes, dropping anything left unexploded and unfilled with tons of holes inside. Did I mention stroke already, or am I just word crafting here like a lunatic? Unlike in most games of the time, Descent used a very novel mechanic of AI adapting to your strategies and gameplay style, by following what you do and how you fight, offering a constant challenge along the way, and requiring you to mix and match your tactics depending on the situation you'll find yourself in. I'm not sure if the video gives it away, but Descent is a really fun title, and if you like free movement shooters that are not on-rail ones, you should definitely give it a go because there's hardly any better, even today. Jagged Alliance is a turn-based tactical strategy role-playing mixture, and apparently a mouthful too. It combines excellent tactical squad-level ground combat, similar to that of XCOM, with unprecedented variety of character personalities and solid omnipresent RPG elements. Story-wise, you're tasked with recapturing an island of Metavira from an evil man called Lucas, who took it over for himself to harvest extremely rare and profitable sap from trees growing on it. And I gotta give justice where it's due, but for one, a villain is not doctor, professor or a scientist. Well done, Jagged Alliance. All that said, you are working on a very limited budget that is entirely dependent on the amount of sap that is extracted from recaptured areas. So, each next that you free and is capable of producing the sap is a step towards your eventual success. And no, I don't doubt that you'll win, cause you're you and there's just no one better. The game is divided into two equally important parts. First, strategic, shows the map of entire island, divided into sectors, and your actions here, like moving your mercenaries between sectors for instance, all happen in real time. And the second is turn-based, close-up top-down tactical view layer that the game switches to for combat and mission encounters. Each of your mercs has a limited set of action points per each turn of combat, and they can be used for anything, any number of times, as long as they're still available. The mercs are hired for a set period of time and paid on a day-by-day basis. They are not faceless, interchangeable no-name soldiers, however, but individual unique characters from around the world, each with their own personality and quirks. Some are cowardly but have particular very useful set of skills, other maniacally bloodthirsty and tough to control. Each and every one of them is different, is what I'm saying. And they all will react differently throughout the combat in response to its development. All that is just the tip of an iceberg though, as they all, being part of an international merc guild, also have opinions and rapport with each other and can straight up refuse to work with one another or perform especially well together if their personalities don't align or do, respectively. While not an unknown title per se, Jagged Alliance was often overlooked in favor of other games. And that's a mistake, a big one, maybe even as big as your mama, as it's a gem unlike many. Does any of that sound interesting to you? Yeah, it does? And what if I told you that I haven't even mentioned dozens upon dozens of available weapons and special items, different mission types, improvements to stats for mercs after missions, and excellent enemy AI that responds to combat situations in a natural and intelligent way, and the plot that organically reacts to and unfolds in response to your progress in the game? That's Jagged Alliance, one of the very best games, not only of 1995, but of all time. Worms was probably one of the most important titles of early 90s and definitely for gaming overall. I doubt there's anyone who've never heard of it, cause it's like not hearing about Rain, Dogpoop or Bethesda games having bugs, but on an odd chance that one of you didn't, I'll quickly try to explain. In essence, it's a 2D artillery style game where your team of cute, talkative tiny worms is randomly placed on a randomly generated fully destructible map, and you have to defeat opposing team or teams of worms in a turn-based combat in a given time limit. Each turn has a set predefined length, usually between 30 and 60 seconds, and a whole run takes 5 to 15 minutes, after which, with every passing turn, water level keeps rising, adding to the urgency and excitement. In one turn, as long as time allows for that, you can move your worm freely, pick up upgrades, choose between numerous available weapons and shoot at the enemy once. A shot always ends the turn. After all that is done, the enemy can do the same. Rinse and repeat until there's only one team, or more often than not when playing with others, one worm left. Because it's highly unlikely that any team would survive the other unscathed. Worms can be played by up to 4 players on a single system, and while it's extremely chaotic at times with so many people and worms at once, it's also one of the most fun experiences you could have in 1995 on PC. Everything that made Dune 2 great makes Command & Conquer even better. It is perhaps the second after Warcraft real RTS game. It focuses on a conflict between two fictional factions, the Brotherhood of Nod and the Global Defense Initiative, and you can take control of either of the sides for one of two 15-mission-strong campaigns. Each of the organizations has different buildings and units, infantry, artillery and tanks among others, and typically for the genre, the gameplay loop heavily relies on supply and demand mechanic, so you need to build your base, then the refinery, and finally send out harvesters to collect the precious resource known only as Tiberium. It is then converted in refinery into money that can be used to erect more structures and build new units, effectively fueling the conflict. Which ironically is also all about control of Tiberium. On Earth, or in space it seems, our hunger for more money and resources is something that never really changes, does it? Quite obviously, Command & Conquer supports online multiplayer, where up to 4 gamers can battle it out for this terrible substance, and even better, 2-player mode, where 1 copy of the game can be used to play on 2 PCs connected locally. All because the game came on 2 separate CDs, something that not many developers did, hardly no one in fact, but it was definitely a very gamer-friendly move by Westwood. Crusader no Remorse is a 2D isometric shooter and the first title in duology of Origin's sci-fi action games. You're a so-called silencer, an elite soldier working for the World Economic Consortium, in short WEC, whose skills are utilized in hunting down the resistance rebels. And you're good at it. That is, until one day after an unexpected WEC mech patrol attack, that you're the only survivor of actually, you realize that you've been working for the bad guys all this time. And this is where the game begins. Gameplay comprises of 16 missions, which must be completed in order. Objectives of these are quite varied and can range from destroying WEC refineries, through prisoner rescue raids, all the way to kidnappings of consortium officials. But objectives aside, most of your time realistically will be spent shooting at anything that moves. Like if it comes within your weapon's range, it's good practice to shoot first and worry about consequences later. Just the way they taught you. The arsenal of available weapons is pretty impressive. There's a lot of them, from regular assault rifles, shotguns and grenade launchers, to more exotic lasers, EMP dischargers and even plasma cannons, to name a few. And each and every one of these works differently and often features unique death animations for your enemies. Most of the environment is also fully destructible, but I wouldn't recommend going crazy with it, exploding your way onto victory, as there are usually a lot of interesting pickups to be found and you may end up accidentally destroying them. Carefully placed shot into an explosive object, however, may help you out of a sticky situation from time to time, so it's worth keeping that in mind too. If shooters were your thing, you had an awesome time in 1995 with Crusader. Earthworm Jim is an action platformer in which you're the titular worm. You're not all elongated, slimy and powerless however, but sporting an advanced spacesuit that grants you arms, legs and a gun to spread destruction and domination all around. When necessary and you have no other choice, you can also use your wormy body in a variety of ways to overcome environmental obstacles. So you can whip your enemies into submission, like any other sadistic worm would, or use your body as a grappling hook to swing away from danger, or have it spin like helicopter blades to hover for a short time, breaking the otherwise deadly fall from great height into a spiky demise, for instance. While most of the levels are your typical platforming fare, on going from start to finish, killing anything that moves and is not you, with an occasional end stage boss, some have special conditions to be completed, like escorting a specific character, and protecting them along the way, for instance. Every few levels there are palette refreshers in the form of space racing sequences or a bungee jumping competition. They're not necessary, but provide a nice break from holding the fire button. Frantic, constant action and variety of gameplay styles keeps Earthworm Jim interesting and fun all the way through. The fact that it looks and sounds as if it was taken straight out of the cartoon is only a cherry on this sweet pie of a game. When I launched Need for Speed for the first time and laid my eyes on it, I became instantly hooked, long before I even played it. That intro, man, all those supercars, those I dreamt of having or even just driving. To be quite honest here with you, hailing from a small town, even seeing one would be great back then. And there they were, on my screen in Hollywood quality fast-paced full-motion video sequences, zooming around different nondescript tracks, seducing me to launch the game. And boy oh boy, I did. And Need for Speed did not fail to deliver. I don't think that I've ever seen as realistic graphics in a racing game before. And I know that I've spoke about few of these awesome at their time games on this channel already, to death even, but presentation wise, none could hold a candle to it. It just looked unlike anything else at the time. To me, it seemed near photorealistic. And it's not that the others were in a different league entirely, no, they were not even playing the same sport. So, naturally, being as impressionable teen as I was instantly charmed and addicted to it all at once. All tracks and cars looked as if they were real, just miniaturized to fit on my 15-inch flickering screen, and switching to steering wheel view made me feel as if I was there too, rushing through beautiful sceneries in ungodly fast monsters against equally as fast opponents. Each of the available cars varied in how they felt when driving, offering not only different parameters on paper, well, on screen, but you get what I mean, but also how they actually handled. Each also had their own distinctive sounds, hums and purrs of the engine, so to speak, so if you've played Need for Speed long enough, you could actually tell which car was approaching you from behind based on the sound cues alone. And music, well, hard rock tracks all throughout, and all pumping the adrenaline through your veins nearly as fast as the racing itself did. But most of all, Need for Speed landed itself in a very comfortable spot of being neither a simulation nor a pure arcade racer. It was somewhere in between, where fans of either subgenre could enjoy it. If there's one thing that I would like to complain about, it would have to be the lack of any in-game damage model, which given everything else that Need for Speed did well, it's still not enough to take away the big W it was for 1995 and in my books. First of all, Terminal Velocity is an amazing title. One that any AAA game or a movie should not be ashamed of. Remember Speed with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock? It could have easily be called Terminal Velocity, and still be as good of a movie, maybe even better. Coming back to our game though, Terminal Velocity is a futuristic first-person 720 degrees movement shooter / flight simulation. I know, it sounds stupid, I feel stupid saying it, but that's what it is and best describes it. And you know what? It's irrelevant how it sounds, cause as a game it's just great. Sure, by now, so 2024, we've had many more and better shooters, but in 1995 there wasn't much Terminal Velocity could be compared to. Most of the game takes place in open areas of various planets, and before each mission you're given a set of specific objectives to fulfill, usually a target or targets to destroy. So, before being able to move to the next planet, you have to complete them. Naturally, all the enemies standing between you and your task have to go bye-bye, so if it moves and is within your view, shoot first and think later. Anyway, all of the planets have tunnel systems, which unlike in Descent that many mistakenly compare Terminal Velocity to, are not labyrinths of endless corridors and rooms, but straightforward entrance to exit first, through which you have to fight your way disposing of any and all enemies and opening doors and passages. If I had to compare them to something, they'd be closer to Attack on the Death Star from Star Wars rather than anything that happens in Descent. Terminal Velocity offers quite a few weapons to choose from, each next deadlier than the last, and all enemies and planets have their distinctive look and characteristics, so there's hardly a moment you'll feel that the gameplay gets stale. It's a damn good game, and I can't recommend it enough. Technically speaking, FIFA Soccer 96 may have not been the first full 3D football / soccer game on PC. That title goes to Actua Soccer, which released a few months earlier, but FIFA was definitely the most impressive one. FIFA Soccer used debuted in NHL Hockey 96 virtual stadium technology, so it featured multiple camera views with dozens of angles and coupled it all with stunning for the time graphics that the gamers were drooling over throughout the entire year. It was probably one of the first games in the genre that could be non-ironically called simple football simulation, where certain replays and actions looked as if they were captured straight from TV, especially on old CRT screens that many of us had back then. FIFA 96 offered two graphical modes, low-resolution VGA and high-res, high-detail CPU-burning SVGA. Obviously, the latter looked much better, offering even sharper smooth visuals, but required a beefy Pentium processor and preferably at least 1MB SVGA card to pull it off effectively. The more the better, really. VGA, aside from running in lower resolution, looked and played virtually the same, so those who could not afford strong systems were not alienated and could enjoy FIFA as well, even if in reduced presentation mode. There's not much more to say about it, football is football, and the game is all about it. Simon the Sorcerer 2, The Lion, the Wizard and the Wardrobe is Adventuresoft's second in popular line of parody point-and-click adventure games and a new worldwide record in length of video game titles. Not really, but can you imagine? Once again you're Simon the Sorcerer, let's not forget that bit, and you've been transported into parallel universe of magic and monsters that you visited in a previous game, all via magic wardrobe created by the first title's villain, Evil Sorcerer. Your quest, should you choose not to pussy out and accept it, not that you have any choice in the matter though, is all about getting home once again, which circles around finding fuel for the wardrobe, searching for it in a vast world consisting of parodies of popular fantasy novels and fairy tales, all the while stopping villain of the first game Sordid from resurrecting and conquering the land. And it's a reoccurring theme with Simon the Sorcerer that it takes what's popular and well known, adds its own little bizarre twist to it and runs with it for better or worse, somehow always ending up with better. Simon the Sorcerer 2 was pretty well received game when it released by both gamers and reviewers, and over its original lifespan, before being resurrected by GOG, it sold over 600,000 copies, which is nothing to scoff at if you keep in mind that it's a point-and-click adventure, a game in a genre that was slowly being phased out by other, more action-packed games from 1995 onward. The Dig is one of the last and most interesting, even if misunderstood and overlooked, LucasArts' point-and-click adventure games. It's also one that was not a huge success, which was a criminal mistake on part of anyone who ignored it, sadly yours truly included, as it's one of the best adventure games ever made. The reason for the sad state of things may be the fact that it was not quirky humor-filled fare like Monkey Island or Maniac Mansion. Instead, it's a dark and gritty sci-fi story that's as captivating as best movies in a genre are. And it's no wonder, because such names as Orson Scott Card and Steven Spielberg were involved in the game's creation. It was not, however, what we are used to with LucasArts, and for that reason, the Dig flew under the radar for many. An asteroid appears seemingly out of nowhere not far from Earth, and it's clear that soon enough, its path through space will place it in a collision course with our planet. And given its size, it threatens a large chunk, if not all, of the world's population. You're you, so a hero as per usual, so naturally you're a part of an Armageddon-like mission to blow it off its deadly trajectory. But as soon as you and your team step on it, you accidentally trigger hidden controls that turn it into a spaceship that takes your whole team to an abandoned planet on the other side of the galaxy. As a result of a few next and unrelated to each other chains of events, your team breaks up, partly in a deadly way I must add, and you find yourself stranded, alone, struggling to explore and understand this new world. Sounds interesting, right? Believe me, it is. The Dig features some of the most difficult puzzles in point-and-clicking that you've seen, but they're not illogical or random, so you should be able to solve them all without resorting to trial and error or a walkthrough if you give them your best. It's one of the last great old-style adventure games, so all fans of the genre should make their mission to play and complete it, without exceptions. You too. Tyrian is an arcade vertically scrolling shoot-em-up with a plot. And I know the plot is totally unnecessary in a shoot-em-up, I agree, but this one's pretty stupid. And I love cliché stories, same as I do movies that are so bad that they end up ironically being really good. Like John Carpenter's They Live, or Lam Choi's Ricky-O, The Story of Ricky. The latter one being an incredible watch if you just wanna get lost in something that's so over-the-top dumb that not much can compare to it. Funny enough, both of them feature some of the worst fighting scenes in the history of cinema. Anyway, coming back to Tyrian's story, you're Trent Hawkins, and you're famous. You are, after all, the entire galaxy's best fighter pilot, and one that time and time again is called to save it. This time is no different. The solar system is on the brink of being taken over by the evil corporation Microsol, and you're the only one who can prevent it. If that wasn't enough, the story is filled to the brim with personal betrayals, twists and turns all around, and even a death of your close family members. Plural. If someone made Tyrian into a movie, it would have been exceptionally bad. A sweet, sweet treat for bad movie connoisseurs like myself. All that aside, I should say something actually about the game, right? Tyrian features full story/campaign mode in which you complete increasingly more difficult levels, same as in most shooters. It offers around a dozen of ships to choose from, quite unlike other shooters, and they can be upgraded for credits in between the levels. Each ship has a front and back weapons, sidekick add-ons, shield and a generator, and all these can be improved, upgraded or replaced. And there's over 100 of those upgrades to pick between. So, if anything, you won't get bored playing Tyrian, and its fun factor is inverse proportional to its plot. In fact, it's probably the best or second best shoot-em-up for those that I've spoke about to date. Best way to experience Tyrian is not through DOSBox or by using a classic PC, but by playing new, free and working on modern systems Open Tyrian, which is identical to the original, just runs under Windows. Albion is a sci-fi party-based role-playing taking place in 2227 on the planet Albion. You're sent out on your factory ship Toronto to harvest resources from a rich but barren newly discovered titular planet Albion. Upon arriving in vicinity, however, something happens and your shuttle crash lands on the surface. When you exit the wreck, you're stunned as you find yourself on a planet that's unlike anything you expected. Not only it is rich in fauna and flora, with life blooming all around, but also hosts various advanced races, each with unique to them cultures and histories. So, an unexpected dried up raisin ended up being fresh and ripe grape. You'll need to explore this strange world, help its inhabitants, and eventually find your way back to Toronto. At any given point, you may have up to 6 characters in your party, all recruited in various locations and joining you for different plot reasons. All of them have their individual fighting styles and /or magical capabilities too. The game is presented in a mixture of 3D first-person view and top-down 2D. An experience, like in most games in a genre, is gained in majority by defeating enemies and solving puzzles, which, since we're on the subject, are much more interesting than your typical at the time, looking for a hidden button or defeating a set number of foes. And it's really refreshing and fun to experience. Combat always takes place on a 2D 6x6 square grid and is entirely turn-based, which for me is a huge plus, but for you, maybe whatever you feel for such combat mechanics. The world of Albion is huge, full of interesting characters and places to explore, and the game itself is one of the best role-playing experiences of the time. Screamer is an incredible arcade racer, similar to console Ridge Racer and Daytona USA, but much better. Not as good as Screamer 2 that released a year later, but that's a subject for another video. Quite literally, in fact. Screamer was a game that proved that the arcade-style racing with beautiful modern fully textured 3D presentation was not only possible on PC, but could run as well, if not better, than on consoles, and most importantly, be hella fun to play. And believe it or not, it delivered on all fronts and exceeded all expectations. All cars and trucks are well designed and nicely rendered, especially if you switch to much more demanding high-res SVGA mode, and each and every available car feels a bit different when driven. Included trucks are unique and can be raced on in opposing direction too, effectively, not really but sorta, doubling their number. The engine powering this beast of a racer is very competent too, offering a very smooth gameplay running in low res with high details on basically any run-of-the-mill 486. But high resolution required a beefy Pentium and a decent, at least 1MB RAM-equipped SVGA card, and not everyone could afford that at the time. Seeing the game in motion at those specs, however, is well worth it. Simply put, Heretic's sequel Hexen is a much better and enjoyable experience. When you were killing desperately in the first game, 2 other Serpent Riders have arrived in your dimension and slaughtered everyone. Well, not really, 3 people survived. Not enough to rebuild the civilization, but plenty enough to tell on them. And tell to you so you could chase down Korax, one of the Serpent Riders that stayed behind, and enact your bloody revenge or dismemberment on him. Preferably both. Hexen kept all the modifications to the original Doom's engine used in the first game and added more new stuff. Most importantly, 3 classes to choose from, so that you could play as a warrior, mage or a cleric. Each of them had 4 different weapons to unlock and use throughout the game, and their own unique stats of speed and armor. So each seems to have its very own feel and playstyle. While technically aiming to be more of an action RPG, Hexen was the very first FPS to feature choice of classes, as no other title in the genre offered totally different playing characters to choose from. Other smaller, yet notable additions were weather effects, jumping, I know, crazy jumping, earthquakes and destructible objects such as trees and vases. But while nice additions, all of these were not generally speaking necessary. And last but not least, scripted events and sequences present in the game allowed for much more complex puzzles and storytelling. To summarize, Hexen was another step up in the evolution of FPS and one of the best early 2.5D games in the genre. Rayman is a proof that PC could. Like that little train. It could pull off platformers as good, if not better, than popular at the time consoles. Running super smoothly encompassed in rich, colorful backgrounds and melodic music with excellent sounds and intricate, perfectly thought-out level design. And all that with ease, no less, and not too demanding on the hardware. Rayman is a story of your classic good versus evil, so Rayman versus Mr. Dark respectively. And it's an action platformer featuring our unusual hero. One that does not have arms or legs, but has hands and feet despite that. Weird. How are they connected to his body? Nobody knows, but my best bet is on hopes, dreams and imagination. A mixture of all 3 in equal measures, keeping those extremities close, even if not directly connected. Aside from standard running and jumping found in other platformers, Rayman can also hover for a short while using his hair as a propeller and throw his fists in an attack. And yes, I meant what I said, throw, so that they could return to him like some kind of a weird hand boomerang. They can be wound-up too for a more powerful punch, like a knockout strong one. In the end, Rayman is the best of the best the system could do when it came to action platforming, a benchmark for 2D platformers for years to come, and an incredibly fun and easy to pick up title that I believe everyone should try, as it's the best example of what PC was capable of if given a chance and some talent thrown at it. Also, it's as good today as it was years ago. Mortal Kombat 3 is my least favorite out of all 2D Mortal Kombat games. Great start, right? But it's irrelevant, cause objectively speaking, it's excellent. It may be the best out of all 3 from a technical point of view, but in my eyes, something was lost in translation between it and the second. Something that's hard to put the finger to, especially when it's not there in reality and just feels off. Perhaps it feels out of place because it overdid on some aspects of its design and under-delivered on others. I mean, did we really need combos counters displayed on the screen? We had them in other games, they just worked naturally and were not advertised on screen. And animalities? I mean, sure, babalities were an unnecessary stretch already, but adding more of what does not work is not the solution. And worst of all the sins they could have committed with Mortal Kombat was removing one of the staple fighters of the whole series, Scorpion. Scorpion and Sub-Zero, like yin and yang, are generic representations of good and bad, not being totally different, just two opposite sides of the same coin. I mean, I know that he's been brought back in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but that's a different game and not one we're covering here today. It seems that I actually do know what I didn't like about it and what was wrong with it in my eyes. Luckily, it wasn't all bad and sour though, and there were some good sides to Mortal Kombat 3 too. Namely, addition of multi-level stages, which while not game-changing, were a very nice touch, adding to the depth of gameplay and feeling of severity behind some of the stronger attacks. Some of those locations even featured new stage fatalities, which are always fun. And last but not least, introduction of new warriors of Nightwolf, Striker, Cabal, Smoke, Sector, Cyrax, Shiva and Sindel was pretty sweet too. Sure, they may have not become faves of anyone straight away, but added variety and made each battle against friends more unpredictable. Mortal Kombat 3 was also a game where Kano returned, which was great, though at least for me he didn't felt as good as he did in the first one. I know, I complained a lot about it, and there's a reason. I hoped that it would be more and better. But generally speaking, Mortal Kombat 3 was not a bad game at all, and I did spend way too much time to admit dismembering opponents in it, and even more so being dismembered myself. Cause yeah, I suck at versus fighting games. These were the 25 essential must-play games of 1995, and they were more than enough to get you through the entire year having fun. Whether you were protecting Earth from aliens, platforming away from evil villains, shooting away through his goons, or decapitating demons from hell, 1995 was not boring. But what do you think of them all? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons below. Smash them if you have to, it helps more than you could ever know. Also, I would like to thank you and all my amazing Patreon and YouTube members for helping this channel keep going. And last but definitely not least, I would like to thank all the wonderful folks who record and upload playthroughs, let's plays and other retro-centric videos here on YouTube, because they help to preserve the games that would have otherwise been long forgotten. So thank you.